The cowboy had ridden alone for so long that silence had become his only companion, the kind of silence that pressed against a man's chest until breathing felt like a chore. Elias Crow owned land that stretched wider than his loneliness, acres of dry soil and stubborn grass, inherited from a father who had died believing land was worth more than love. The house stood firm but hollow, a log cabin built with strong hands and lived in by none. Elias needed help, or at least that was the lie he told himself. A maid, he said. Someone to cook, to clean, to keep the dust from piling up like the years on his shoulders. What he did not say, what he would never dare to say aloud, was that the nights were getting colder, and the sound of his own breathing was starting to frighten him. Word traveled fast in frontier towns, and when he mentioned he was looking for a maid, the women laughed softly and looked away. Some were afraid of his isolation, others of his reputation as a man who spoke little and felt too much. So when the woman arrived one afternoon with the sun burning copper above her head, Elias thought she was lost. She stood straight in front of his porch, her boots planted like roots, her eyes dark and steady as a still river. She wore the colors of her people, fringe swaying gently in the wind, braids falling over her shoulders like history woven into flesh. He told her she had the wrong place. She did not flinch. He told her he was looking for a maid. She tilted her head, studied him the way hunters study storms, and said calmly, "I came to be your wife." The word struck harder than a rifle shot. Elias laughed once, sharp and disbelieving, because nothing in his life had ever arrived so boldly. An Apache woman did not come to a white man's land to become his wife, not without reason, not without fire behind it. He told her to leave. She did not move. He asked her name. "Ayanna," she said, voice steady. He asked why. She said, "Because the earth spoke." And I listened. Elias felt anger then, not at her, but at the strange tightening in his chest. He told her he wanted no trouble with tribes, no blood, no misunderstandings. She answered that misunderstandings were the only reason blood had ever been spilled. The wind carried dust between them like a warning. He noticed then that she was not afraid of him. Not of his gun, not of his land, not of his history. That frightened him more than anything. He told her he could not marry her, that he did not even know her. She said knowing came after standing still long enough to see. She explained that her people believed paths crossed for reasons, carved long before footsteps touched the ground. Elias scoffed, but part of him remembered his mother saying something similar before. Sickness took her. He offered her water. She accepted. That was how it began, not with love, but with refusal that slowly cracked. The days that followed were tense, like the air before thunder. Ayanna did not leave. She helped herself to work, not as a servant, but as a presence, moving through the cabin as if it already knew her. She cooked without being asked, fixed what was broken without announcing it, and never once lowered her eyes when Elias spoke. Townsfolk whispered. Some warned him. Some threatened him. He told himself she would leave. She told him she would not. At night, he lay awake listening to her quiet breathing from the other side of the wall, realizing that the silence he had feared was finally retreating. He learned she had lost family to violence, that she believed peace could only be built by stepping into the fire instead of running from it. He learned that she was stronger than most men he had known, and gentler than any woman he had loved. When he asked again why she chose him, she said, "Because you are a man standing at the edge of change, and you don't yet know which way you'll fall." And when danger finally came knocking, when rifles were lifted and lines were drawn, Elias realized the maid he had asked for never existed. What arrived instead was destiny, wearing braids and courage, demanding everything he thought he could never give. And as the chapter of his old life closed, something new and dangerous opened, something that would either destroy them both or forge a future no one would dare imagine. Change never arrives gently, and when it finally came for Elias Crow, it rode in on fear, gunpowder, and the judgment of men who believed the world belonged to them alone. The town did not forgive what it did not understand, and an Apache woman standing beside a white rancher was more than curiosity, it was defiance. Whispers hardened into threats, and threats into visits made after sundown. Elias felt it in the way doors closed when he entered, in the hands that hovered too close to holsters. Ayanna felt it long before he did. She had grown up reading the land the way others read faces, and the earth beneath the ranch had begun to hum with warning. She told Elias that peace was thinning like ice in spring. He argued not because he disagreed, but because accepting her words meant accepting responsibility for her people, for a future he never planned to fight for. When riders appeared on the ridge one evening, silhouettes cutting the sunset into sharp pieces, Elias reached for his rifle out of instinct. Ayana stopped him with a single touch. "Violence answers only itself," she said, though her eyes were hard with readiness. The men came closer, voices loud, accusations louder. They demanded she leave. They reminded Elias whose land this was supposed to be. Elias surprised himself by stepping forward by saying she stayed. That single sentence shattered the last illusion of neutrality. That night the land breathed tension. Ayana told Elias her truth fully then, not as a plea but as a promise. She had not chosen him because he was safe, but because he was standing at the crossroads between hatred and courage. Her people believed some unions were not about love alone, but about balance. Elias realized love had already crept in while he wasn't watching, settling quietly into the spaces where loneliness once lived. When violence finally erupted, it was swift and brutal. A group of men came riding with fire in their hands and fear in their hearts. Elias fought not as a hero, but as a man protecting what he had finally named as his own. Ayana stood beside him, fearless, her presence a shield stronger than bullets. When dawn broke, the land was scarred but standing. Word spread wider than the damage, that an Apache woman had stood her ground, that a cowboy had chosen unity over comfort. The aftermath was not clean. Some left, some stayed, but the land changed. Elias and Ayana married not with celebration, but with resolve. Their union witnessed by sky and soil instead of crowds. Over time, others followed their example, small steps toward understanding. Elias learned that strength was not found in ownership, but in protection. Ayana learned that even hardened hearts could soften without breaking. Together they built something fragile and fierce, something worth defending. And as seasons passed, the ranch became more than land. It became proof that the future could be shaped by those brave enough to stand in it together. Their story did not end with peace, but with purpose, and the earth, patient and watching,